Liberty lovers, and welcome to a Liberty Mike podcast, broadcasting from an undisclosed location in the heart of Dixie. I am Michael, and I am here with Shane and Jamie. And I guess since you guys don't know either of them, we'll start with a little introduction. So, Shane.
Hi, I'm Shane Taylor. I'm an attorney in Mobile, Alabama at Shane A. Taylor and Associates PC.
Got a plug.
My name is Jamie. I'm an attorney at Shane Taylor and Associates, and Shane is my boss, so everything he says is correct.
Well done. All right. Like I said before we got started here, I did want to bring up something with you guys that we talked about last week, which was the Childs versus Salazar case that the Supreme Court offered their opinion on a couple of weeks ago now. It's this case in Colorado where they had a counselor who was advising young patients against or to explore alternative, not against exactly, but to explore alternatives to gender-affirming care. But Colorado had a law that required that they offer gender-affirming care. And she fell afoul of the law, went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court sent it back to the lower courts with the instruction that they address it again under the doctrine of strict scrutiny. So I was hoping maybe you guys could give us a little detail on what that means.
Strict scrutiny is a very strict, as it sounds, a strict standard of review. I am not terribly familiar with this case. Did not hear a lot about this. I've heard as it's been winding its way through various courts, but I would love to weigh in heavily on this, but I'm not terribly familiar with it. Jamie, are you?
So the question is, what is strict scrutiny? Is that what more you're thinking? Or
Yeah, that's
the Supreme Court has kicked it down to tell them how to review it. For any listeners that maybe don't understand the different scrutinies that the Supreme Court has, it's the way in the prongs that must be met for a court to uphold or enforce a law. I'm a little bit familiar with the case in the fact that I saw the absurdity of it, I suppose. And I believe that the Supreme Court was largely correct in kicking it back down under the strict scrutiny lens.
Yeah, basically, strict scrutiny kind of places a burden on government to show that it's not, that it's a reasonably tailored, I mean, I'm going way back to law school here, but it's reasonably tailored. It's not overly broad. It's not a huge governmental overreach. For example, we do family law primarily, and parental rights are supposed to get strict scrutiny, according to the U.S. Supreme Court. I do not find that to be the case in practice, but that is what the current state of the law is. Mm-hmm. And so that's what they're trying to do here. For whatever reason, the court have said that they want to show that it's a not overly broad law, and it's kind of limiting government. Okay.
I guess they were looking at it primarily as a freedom of speech issue, since her practice is talk therapy primarily. The way we interpreted it is the Supreme Court sending it back down, saying without saying that the state law is not constitutional. And the upside for us libertarians is that they're also it's a blow to the increasing centralization of medical care. Does that seem like a reasonable based on what you know? And Jamie, since you're following the case, I guess a little closer.
Well, I think the buzzwords that we missed earlier was strict scrutiny is supposed to be means that it needs to be narrowly tailored to support a compelling government interest. And I think on its face, the state law wasn't necessarily narrowly tailored. And if the fundamental right, obviously being freedom of speech, it's pretty rigorous to get through that. And I do see how it's tying into, the health care, I guess, overreach per se. I having not going on my soapbox of the connections of healthcare and the money behind that and the way that it's pushing certain people and agencies to support certain things. That's sort of that, I guess, a side, maybe backup issue of this case in Colorado.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Let's move on to the topic of the week here, which is taxes. It being tax week, I figured there's no way that we could not talk about taxes. I think probably the first issue that I wanted to address here affects you guys a little bit more than it does me. But I guess I would say it's the popularity of the soak the rich tax plans when politicians are running for office. It's very easy to push these kind of tax plans. They're very popular because not a lot of people, a small percentage of the population are high income earners and a large percentage of the population are not. As long as you have an uneven income system, I guess there's no way that could ever be anything but different. There's always going to be the particularly rich above everybody else. And everybody thinks that the people that are richer than them should be taxed more. But of course, people at their level should not. That's kind of the way it goes. One of the big accusations that comes from the politicians, of course, is the idea that the rich need to pay their fair share. And so I guess before I get into the statistics of this, if you have any commentary on what I've said so far, let's hear it.
Well, I come at it from a bit of a libertarian perspective. Obviously, I'm not a fan of taxes. No one is, but I truly believe that government should be limited to its essential functions, that it's become a bloated monstrosity. We get less, I think the thing with European countries, yes, they're taxed more heavily, but they get more return on investment. It's like we just don't see the same return here for the amount of money that our government just wastes. I mean, it's awful. The inefficiency, the amount of money that we just piss away. And now we're what's our national debt right now?
39.
Jesus God, 39 trillion with a T dollars. That is insane. That's an amount of money I can't wrap my head around at all. But yeah, back to what you were saying about soaking the rich. I have a friend who is a former IRS tax attorney, and we were talking about this not long ago. And he says, yeah, they push these things through because nobody has any sympathy for people that make more money than them, and they just think, hammer the rich, hammer the rich. But of course, what we're seeing with California and other states, I've been actually kind of enjoying watching this, is all these evil billionaires not only leaving these states for places like Texas and Florida, but taking their companies with them. And so you're seeing the fact that they were, in fact, paying a shit ton of taxes to these states, because you're seeing now California's infrastructure is going to, I predict, start having serious issues within the next few years, because you got people like Musk and Ellison and everybody else who are pulling out. What was it? Was it Zuckerberg moved to Florida the other day? These people are all picking up, and not like in the case of Elon Musk, not only leaving the state of California, but relocating Tesla and SpaceX to Texas, where tax laws are a lot more favorable. They're taking the jobs with them. They're taking all of the revenue that's generated from those businesses with them, and it's going to cripple California. So this is kind of like it's kind of a Laffer curve issue. Are you gentlemen familiar with the Laffer curve at
Yes.
all? Okay, so we've got a point where there is on a curve with taxation, when you tax at a certain level, there's a point where you generate the most revenue, but when you tax above that, your revenue starts to drop off as a percentage, and they have exceeded the Laffer curve sweet spot in California and other places when they overly tax the rich, and it's actually going to hurt them long term. Whereas if they hadn't been greedy, I think it goes back to the whole what is it? Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered thing, and they've just become hogs and just want to gut rich people, and now they're going to pay for it.
Well, and it was entirely predictable too. You just got to look at France. As France increased their tax rates on their citizens, they just had a drain of the very wealthy. They moved to other European states. And, it's the same thing with California. In fact, it's probably easier to move out of California into another state than it is to move from France into another European state in a lot of ways. I guess what people don't seem to understand, or these politicians don't seem to understand, is that the top 1% can only be 1 in 100, right? So you're always going to be able to, or I guess it's something that they do understand. Honestly, it's that they appeal to the 99 and instead of the 1. But the 1 is who funds their campaign, and the 1 is who funds all their projects that they want in the state. And as far as the need for that taxation to pay for various things, and this idea that the rich don't pay their fair share, I pulled the statistics from the IRS from 2023, which is, of course, the last tax year that they're finished. But roughly half of the U.S. tax revenue came from individual tax returns. So it's about $2.2 trillion, which is already an obscene amount of money to begin with. The average tax rate for all people that file tax returns is about 14%. The top 1% paid 26.3% of their income in taxes. And it accounted for almost 40% of the total tax revenue, or individual tax revenue. I'm not counting corporate taxes and tariffs and the like. So the 1% paid almost double the rate of the average, and almost 2/5 of the total tax revenue that was collected. I think it seems to me that they are paying their share.
Yeah, I would agree. And Jamie, you had something to say?
Well, I'm in the unique position of, although I'm an American, I grew up in Eastern Canada for the first 20 years of my life. So I may be one of the only Americans that genuinely doesn't mind paying taxes, because I've lived a life where it's been much, much worse for some years. And in Eastern Canada specifically, there's only 1 or 2 families that, Canada as a whole, but especially where I'm from, that are, you would say, the 1%, like they might be here in America. And those families are largely hated or disliked by the average Joe, which is always bewildering to me, because without, Irving Oil in New Brunswick, Eastern Canada would shortly cease to exist, with absolutely no income. And I would love to know the statistics of what that family pays in taxes compared to how they keep that 1/3 of Canada afloat. And you apply that to the United States, it's the same way, where if Canada is doing, or has done, what some Americans want to do, and that's to cripple the top. And the result is that everybody just has less to go around. Nothing like New Brunswick, like a couple potholes every 6 or 7 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't want to sound like an Elon Musk fanboy, but he is, the richest man in the world. So when we talk about taxes and wealthy people, that's his name's going to come up. But I believe he's still on record as paying the largest tax bill ever at $1 billion, which is just an insane amount of money for the government to take from any one person. Mm-hmm. And this morning I was listening to NPR on the way in, and they had, and I'm going to mispronounce his name, the new mayor of New York, Mondavi, the guy who's promising everybody a pony and a blowjob. He's like, everybody, just everything's going to be free. It's going to be this socialist utopia. And he's talking about how in his first 100 days he's already delivered, free childcare, because free, and I love that word. It's free childcare for everyone, and it's not free, and it's coming from the producers. And I'm really interested, and I'm not rooting for the guy to fail. I just think that's the most likely outcome here. But I am interested in seeing how the next few years of his administration, what the effects are on the city of New York, a city that I like very much. I like to go visit New York. Wouldn't want to live there, but I like Manhattan. I like going up there and hanging out. But I think he's going to. I won't be so over the top as to say like destroy New York. I think New York will recover. But I think it's going to be bad.
Yeah, I think that the closest thing you could have to free childcare is if you came and just dropped off your kid in the park, and even then it wouldn't be free because there's still groundskeepers to pay and so forth. Like somebody is working there and somebody's getting paid. How could it possibly be free? You're paying it one way or another. And in fact, the top 20% of income earners in the U.S. pay more than 80% of the total tax revenue collected by the United States. And in fact, the top 50% pay almost 97% of the total tax revenue. Like the bottom half of income earners in the U.S. only pay less, just over 3% of the total tax revenue collected by the United States.
Yeah, I think my opinion, not that anyone cares what it is, I've always been of the opinion that we don't need to raise taxes. We need to cut spending, and we need to cut it drastically. I don't agree with how Doge executed everything. In fact, I think it was kind of a bit of a disaster, at best ineffective, at worst, harmful. That said, I think they had the right idea. Go in there and cut it to the bone. Get rid of a lot of these administrative agencies. Cut budgets to things that are necessary. I don't know. Stop supporting and propping up governments all over the world. I get we do that to a certain point. Like USAID projects soft power all over the world. I get that, but I think we could dial it back, cut it in half. It would still be too much, but it would be a start in the right direction.
Yeah, unfortunately, Doge turned out to just be a show. Nothing really came of it in the end. They could make their initial cuts, but they couldn't make Congress agree to them, and
their heart was in the right place, though.
Yeah, I like to think that. So let's talk about the actual debt at this point, because I think that's looking long term in the U.S. and not really that long a term. This is going to be a real problem for the economy in this country. The $39 trillion existing debt. They add roughly $1 trillion to it a year just in interest, and the interest rate is low. The average interest rate is something like 3.3% that they pay on that debt every year. But it's climbing because the older debt, as they pay it off, was financed at a lower rate, and so every time they pay off a tranche, I guess, of older debt, that rate goes up for what still exists. And so I did some like back of the napkin amortization calculations because I couldn't help myself. And there are about 100 million taxpayers in the U.S. And with the $39 trillion debt at an interest rate of 3.3%, rising by a small amount to 3.7% over the next 10 years at a steady rate, each taxpayer would need to add $50,000 tax payment each year for the next 10 years to pay off that debt. And that's assuming that we balanced the budget and didn't add any additional debt. It's completely impossible. We'll never catch up with this.
Which, every president since Clinton, who I was at the time not a fan of in hindsight, he was actually pretty good in a lot of ways. Every president since Clinton, Republican and Democrat, have just blown our national debt up. Our deficit continues to get bigger. The debt itself continues to get bigger. And I hate to throw a second NPR plug out there, but I was listening to Marketplace a while back, and an economist was on there talking about how in a decade or so, our debt market requires other people to buy our debts, and increasingly other countries are not buying U.S. debt. It's going to become hard for us to service this debt in the next decade or so without printing money and engaging in quantitative easing, which we're seeing now from the COVID years of quantitative easing, the effects on inflation. So you're going to see runaway inflation. We're not able to service our debt. It's just not sustainable. No country, no house, no business just can continue to spend more money than they bring in indefinitely. Eventually it ends, and it ends badly. And we are now approaching a point of no return in the next 10 to 15 years.
I think a lot of it kind of ties into what you said earlier about how, the 99% of people kind of are assuming they can leave it to the 1% to figure out in terms of, the 1% can pay more taxes. And I think a lot of that, the same thought process ties in here, where 99% of Americans aren't even considering because it's off their radar, and the richer people can deal with it. But then people that get to power aren't really, like you said, trying to appeal to that 1%. They're just appeasing the 99 who we can keep trucking along, and people aren't realizing where the truck is headed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. We're only concerned about, I say we, politicians, and I am definitely not one, are concerned about the next election cycle. That's it. They want to get elected. They want to do their next term. Then they worry about the next term. And there's no long-term planning. They kick the can down the road. They think it'll be somebody else's problem. And it will be, but it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, just completely unsustainable, and and we see the effects in the economy already. If you look at comparisons between costs of major costs in like the 70s compared to the 90s compared to now, costs of houses, costs of cars, income levels, etc. A couple of these things are moving a whole lot faster than the other. So now you have to have two incomes in most households to just make ends meet. And even then, the younger generations are looking at a future where they will never be able to afford a house. Most of them. Cars are even difficult. Like, have you looked at used car costs recently? It's it's unreal. But the income levels compared to the costs of everyday goods just continue to deflate. Do y'all have anything else you want to say about taxes and debt before we try and hit something else? If we have time? Okay. Do we have time to talk a little bit about what's going on in the Middle East right now?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you want to start us off? Like, how do you feel about what's going on right now?
Well, first off,
I mean, it connects to the debt too, because obviously, like, the biggest expense that the U.S. government has is military spending.
Oh, yeah.
It's roughly 25 cents out of every dollar that you pay into the government goes to blow up something halfway around the world.
yeah, I will say this: I'm former Army and support the military, like Donald Trump in a lot of ways, and other ways not. Certainly don't root for him to fail. That said, our military spending, again, is another area where we could cut and we'd still be fine. We outspend any other country militarily to a ridiculous amount. I've heard the stat that we outspend the next 25 nations combined, and I would believe that. The rescue of that one pilot the other day, they're projecting the cost of that at $200 million to rescue one guy.
Yeah. Well, and Trump's wanting to add another 50% of what was already being spent on the military, wants to add another 50%.
Yeah, it's just insane. I am not a fan of what we're doing in Iran. I don't want Iran to acquire nukes, obviously, but I think there were more elegant solutions to this problem than bombing the entire country, bombing population centers. The school with the Tomahawk was a particularly unfortunate incident. We've had issues in the past where I remember one time Iran was trying to create fission grade material that they could use in nuclear weapons. We knew that they used centrifuges to spin it up. The centrifuges had to spin at a certain speed for the nuclear material to be usable. And we uploaded a worm virus to the centrifuges, made them spin at the wrong speed, screwed them up, sabotaged their program. I thought that was a very elegant solution. Obviously, we can't always do that, but I think we could do precision strikes. We could do a lot of stuff other than declaring war on Iran. That's just my opinion. I don't see an end game here. It's not something I would have done.
I was going to say, to be fair, we didn't declare war.
Well, this is true. Yeah, we just unilaterally, Trump kind of took us to war. And maybe there's more information than what we as the public get. But based on what I see, it's not the course of action I would have chosen. And I wish we could find a face-saving way to de-escalate it and get out quickly.
I think the line we as the public get is one of my favorites. As the guy in the room that's a little bit younger than the two other podcasters here, I've only ever known
A lot younger.
somewhat questionable. In my mid 30 years, all I've known is questionable Middle Eastern conflict. And we're always under the guise of, well, there's just a little bit more, they know more than us. Like, clearly they wouldn't be doing this. Well, that's not clear, because for my entire life, sure, there's in the past, there, 9/11, the events happened, and it's like we need to respond in some capacity. But then we got there, and there's obviously the lovely weapons of mass destruction and all these things. Well, they just knew more than us. We just got to trust them. I don't really know what happened in Iran specifically at this time. They've been, our enemy for how long? But to my knowledge, as the public knows, there was a singular event, or what we're really trying to accomplish to say that we're done and can come home. There's this moving target, because of course there is. That's the entirety of my life in the Middle East. There's some moving target that we're trying to hit. I don't really know what it is, but let's throw $1 million trillion at it.
Yeah, actually, I had a commenter on a YouTube video of ours, which is uncommon. So I saw it. And for that guy, because I didn't respond to it, because I'm not just always on social media. So if that guy's still listening, I did read it. I did watch the video that you linked. And this is the theory that, it's not the first place that I've heard it, but this may be an excuse of what we're really after. And it's something that Adam Curry on the No Agenda show calls the North Sea Nexus idea. Is the idea that we went into Venezuela because of all the drugs and drug money that was going from there into Europe, not into the United States, but it was really to kind of screw over the Europeans. And there's some theory out there that this is the same thing, because the British insurance industry controls the energy trade, essentially. That the British insurers and underwriters account for something like 2/3 of offshore energy and almost everything that goes through the straits. That they are a little over a third of global shipping they underwrite, and that this was to get this out of their hands, more or less. And of course, he has his own plan of insuring and reinsuring this stuff at a cost of only $20 billion, which I think that will probably go the same way as the government getting into college loans, underwriting college loans. It'll just increase the prices, or it won't be covered at all, one of the two. At any rate, I'm of the opinion that this is more about China than about our allies in the North Sea, but it has disrupted the market share, the strong market share that these UK companies have over the shipping. So.
Yeah, and back to what Jamie said about not really having the full picture, or maybe there is no more information. I am as skeptical of government as I think anybody is, but I do remember, and I don't know how much of this I can actually talk about. It's been some decades, but it's probably still classified. But there was a time where I accidentally, with air quotes, hit a Chinese target, and we blamed it on bad maps. You can probably Google this and figure it out. At the time, I was watching the news just like everybody else, and I thought, oh my God, we are so incompetent. How embarrassing. Some friends of mine in Special Forces gave me some additional information. Turns out the Chinese had seized some American technology and were actually storing it in this location, and we're going to try to reverse engineer it. So we, quote, accidentally hit that target, but that was the actual reason. But without that additional information, it looked really stupid and incompetent on our part. And I still don't think that's been made public. But who knows? Maybe there's some greater piece of information we're missing. I'm sure we don't know the whole picture, whatever it is, but based on the facts that I have and the facts that I think are generally available, I'm not a fan of being at war or whatever the hell we're doing in Iran.
Yeah, it does seem like all of the things that we at least claim to be wanting to do, we've done the opposite. We didn't want Iran to control the Straits of Hormuz. They didn't really, or at least they didn't assert that control before this war. They do now. They're probably not going to give it up at this point. I think that you've incentivized them to seek nuclear weapons. I will say that, like, one of these euphemisms that goes on, euphemism is probably not the right term considering, but these euphemisms that go on in government speak and media speak is this, the nuclear ambitions of Iran. Really, they keep conflating nuclear weapons ambitions and nuclear energy ambitions. There's really been no evidence out there that they were seeking nuclear weapons, and nuclear energy is something that they have a right to. I mean, I heard J.D. Vance saying that they come out here and they're going to say that they absolutely maintain the right to have nuclear ambitions, but what he's talking about is their ability to enrich uranium for civilian power. And potentially medical uses, but under the JCPOA, they were limited to something like 3.7% enrichment, and they stuck to it until Trump pulled out of it in his first term. So I think that there's a lot of misrepresentation of what's going on, and it was the most recent Ayatollah that said that God says that we're not allowed to have nuclear weapons. Now he's gone. Are we going to expect that the guy that takes his place is going to be favorable to the U.S. opinion on what they should do with their nuclear program?
Yeah, we're certainly not endearing ourselves to anybody over there, I don't think. I mean, I think there are some people that initially welcomed the attempt at regime change, but they seem to have gotten real quiet real quick.
Yeah, well, when we tell the people that they should rise up and overthrow their government and take their freedom because we're doing this for them, and then we tell them we're going to blow up all their bridges and power plants, it's kind of hard to maintain.
Yeah,
that.
Or when we don't step in and support them the way we said that we would.
They should have seen that coming.
And we have a history. We have a little history as a country, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I'm correct in thinking we took out their last leader with some missile of some sort, right? But hey, why don't you go be the new leader? Nothing bad will happen, I promise.
Yeah. Well, and I'm opposed to state-sponsored assassination anyway. I think that that's not the way that you should do business, generally speaking. Knowing full well, of course, that this is not unique. That the U.S. government has definitely used assassination in the past, but they haven't been so open about it as they have been under Trump. It's the thing that I find interesting about Trump is that he doesn't know what he's not supposed to say out loud, and that's what sets him apart from other politicians. I don't think he's uniquely evil or any worse than any of the rest of them. He just doesn't know what he's not supposed to say.
I disagree. I think he knows exactly what he's not supposed to say. I don't think Trump cares. I think he's reached a point where he doesn't care, and the average person, I was going to say American, but I think this is probably true of people in any country, the average person's inability to separate signal from noise, their ability to do that's not very good. And I think I'm pretty good at filtering out the distractions, the things that don't matter with Trump, the things that outrage a lot of people from the things that do matter, like the whole, Jesus, what the hell? I'm sorry, the doctor picture the other day where Trump was attempting to look like a doctor. Is it blasphemous? I'm not a big religious person, probably. That said, is that going to ruin my day? No. Is it something I'm going to worry about? No. But things like going to war in Iran, yeah, that's something we should probably pay a little more attention to. But people get so distracted. Trump is constantly just got this constant shit show. It's like a shotgun of just shit every day coming out. And it'd be like one thing that matters and three that don't. But the three that don't get more coverage than the one that does.
Yeah, people are more concerned with the gossip than the policy. And this is just generally frustrating to me about us as a culture, is that him using a bad word or maybe some kind of off-color tweet is more important than increasing the debt, starting a war, and et cetera.
Exactly. They get equal media time, or maybe the lesser things do get more media time. They are not equal. One is a lot more important than the other. Trump said mean things. I don't care. Yeah. Trump increased our national debt by another $2-3 trillion. I do care. One of those things matters more than the other.
Yeah. And he is a master of controlling them, or actually, I guess it's preventing any kind of significant bad news staying in the media very long, because it's just one crisis after another, and most of them aren't really crises.
Yeah, you just get so much. And somebody even said this when he was coming into his second term. He has a strategy of I think throwing so much stuff out there that there are too many things for you to lock onto the one that matters and attack it. People just get so bogged down in, oh my God, did you see his tweet? And they get all offended about it. Meanwhile, there's something actually huge going on right over here, and they just are totally blind to it or ignore it or don't have the mental energy to engage.
Yeah, there's so much under Trump that you'll never have like weeks where you're just focused on his affair with the receptionist, like with Clinton, Like that would never happen under Trump because something else that is more important or maybe less important, but, draws more media attention will happen next.
Yeah, it's like Neil Brennan said. He's like, with Trump, we've become so jaded with politicians and everything. Now Trump can do pretty much anything. We're just like, put it on our tab.
Yeah. Well, I know you got to get out of here, so I appreciate the both of you taking your time to join me on this podcast. Maybe we can do it again sometime in the future when we have like a good like legal thing to talk about.
Yeah, it's been fun.
And again, I appreciate it. And if you have anything else to say to close out, please do. And then I will close us out the rest of the way.
Thank you, Mr. Mike. And I guess I will make it clear that although I am Canadian, I am still very anti-tax.
Yeah, and I too am very anti-tax as well. And I've really appreciated the opportunity. This is the first time we've done this podcast. We've talked about it forever. Next time, I think we do whiskey.
Absolutely.
And we'll get increasingly sloppy as the podcast goes on, no doubt.
That's the way it usually goes. Well, we hit the two big like libertarian sticking points, taxes and war on this one. We're anti both, and it seemed like a nice softball to get you started, right? But that'll be it for us this week. You can follow us on Facebook, subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, Podbean. Like and share, comment. You can always email me, michael@thelibertymike.com. And we'll be back next week when we finally get this right. Ciao.